Hey everybody, this is too long. I'm cutting it in 2 parts at least. So here's the first half of a bunch of ESL questions. Here's the regular introduction. Ready, go! Hey everybody, today is going to be a sort of whatever we're calling video responses now for Give Me a Flake Man and somebody who sent him in some questions. So this is a response to a set of questions that was sent to Give Me a Flake Man or Give Me a Break Man, Victor. And I'm going to go through, and Victor gave a set of responses primarily aimed at those people engaged in for-profit eikaiwa type classes. So Victor runs his own school, and so he uses basically that style of technique. And the things that you find in the Japanese public school or private school classroom are a little bit different, and this goes from elementary school, junior high school, and even into university in many cases, although at the university point a lot of things kind of combine. In order to prevent me from having to read the questions out loud, I'm going to read them to myself, and I over here am going to read them out loud for you guys. Hi! I'm almost never on this side. Okay, so ready? Here we go. Okay, I'm going to read the questions. Topic 1, procedures and routines. What American-type classroom management techniques do you think do or don't work in Japanese classrooms, and why? Yeah, I don't think about class management techniques per se. I don't consider them American or Japanese, although there are some pretty consistently Japanese ones. Mostly class management's a little bit missing in a lot of the teacher training stuff. So I think most of the class management techniques that you're taught in a reputable education program are fine. The one tool that you do not have as a teacher in Japan is the ability to easily send a student down to the principal's office. They just don't do that, really. Although I do encourage my students to do it because I think it's the right thing to do. Should be the vice principal's job anyway. That are used most often, probably just scolding the students. Generally, there's not generally that much problem. Maybe have to yell at them once or twice to get them to be quiet. I don't generally like to do that. I prefer to stand and wait for them to become silent. So one of the techniques that Victor had asked about was why we teach teachers to not speak when they're looking at when they're writing on the blackboard. Primarily, it's because most of the kids that are going into teaching can't do both, and if they're talking into the blackboard, their voice doesn't project enough to reach the 40 students behind them. In a small classroom you can get away with it, but the acoustics in modern Japanese classrooms are not really built well, so unless you are very good at projecting your voice and getting a good bounce off the chalkboard, that's generally why we tell them not to do that. Most of them can't carry their voice to the back of the room if they're writing on the board at the same time. So in order to make sure that the students can hear, we have them write, stop, talk. I tend to encourage students to write and talk, but not actually face the blackboard, and so they'll be writing this way. My favorite math teacher in high school was left-handed, so he could erase the board and write on the board at the same time. It was awesome to watch. What class management techniques in Japan are used most often or work well? Which do you prefer and why? Do you think they work better than certain techniques used in America? Yeah, Japanese classrooms really have a big mismatch with class management. There's a lot of things missing. The class isn't controlled very well, or it's overly controlled and nothing at all can happen. So there's no middle ground. It's either really strict, sit in rows silently while the teacher speaks, or it's just chaos. And a lot of times chaos with no control. So I don't think that in most schools of education here they teach classroom management techniques very well. They don't gain attention very well. It's a problem with how the teachers are trained. Engaging students who are being disruptive is usually the best way to approach that. The question was, do they work better than certain techniques used in America? Well, which techniques are you referring to? You need to be specific with the questions, so that's kind of a hard one to answer. Some work better. Being patient for students here tends to work better. Yelling at students tends to work better in the US. They don't generally, they'll respond to a degree, but classroom management techniques are about trying to not get in that position in the first place. One thing that does happen here, particularly in elementary school, is the students, one of the things that happens here that does not happen in the US, particularly for elementary school, is kids are allowed to run around and hit the teacher, and it's not anything that I would recommend. I don't think it works. It certainly doesn't work in America, and I don't think it works very well here either. What are your methods of discipline? Do you have a reward system? Mine go anywhere from making the class sit silently and wait until all the way to extra homework or things like that. Some teachers use a penalty, a strike system, and if you get to the third or fifth, depending on the teacher, then you get a 0 for the day. And you can do that in university, but it's not easy to implement at a high school or junior high school level for reasons that I'll get to in a little bit. Do you have a reward system? Yeah, actually I use a stamp pad. I don't use it so much anymore, but I know a lot of teachers use a stamp pad. Whenever a student answers a question, they get a stamp in the book, and then they can turn in the stamps for treats or extra stuff, what are goodies basically. Whether it's snacks, although snacks are generally discouraged in elementary school and junior high school and high school, you can go to the 100 yen shop and get little toy rewards and stuff like that, but you need to make sure you clear it with the teachers that you're working with. If you're in the university, just the stamp is usually enough. Seals and stickers also are decent rewards. How does the grading system work? How do you deal with late work, if at all? This is actually fairly complicated because of how the cohort system in the Japanese schools work, which means everybody basically moves together. There's not a lot of failing of students. So students move together through the system, through the school system. If a student is failing, generally the teacher has to come in and do one-on-one tutoring to bring the student up to speed. So you don't get to fail students all that often. It's possible, but there's a very complicated teacher meeting system that isn't implemented, and it's way past the scope of this video. But maybe if people are interested, I might get somebody to talk about it. So how do you deal with late work? Usually I mark it down 10% per day that it's late, but again, I'm dealing with university students, high school students. You either don't accept it or you mark it down a little bit and then scold them for not turning it in on time. Every school will have a system, and if you're in a university, probably you'll be relying on what other teachers are doing there, or you can bring in your own system and try to convince other people to do it. Both of those work. How do you relate to your students? Friendly but not friends. That goes for pretty much all levels. Elementary school in particular, friendly but not friends, because you do need an authority figure in the classroom, and as a teacher, you are it. A lot of Japanese teachers cross this line, I think, and try to be students' friends, and part of that comes from this idea that the students are raised by the school and by the teachers, and the homeroom teacher has almost as much say in the raising of the student as the parents. That is a kind of a big problem for many reasons here. But stick with friendly but not friends, and you'll be fine. How do you relate the curriculum to your students? How do you relate the curriculum to your students? So I assume that means how do you inform the students of the class objectives? For me, it's written in the syllabus they get before they decide to take my class. In most cases, it's written in the syllabus that you give the first day of class, and they don't need to know every curriculum objective, but they do need to know the broad strokes. You'll be able to do this, this, and this by the time you leave the class, and if you can't, you fail. That's it. How do you begin class each day? Well, in a regular classroom, usually it's some sort of warm-up activity. Come in, greet the students, a little bit of small talk. A lot of teachers that I know do a lot of free class talk, or they'll write a topic on the board and the students will respond to the topic. For free talk, maybe 5 minutes, and then that kind of works as a warm-up. Other people play games as warm-up activity. How do you know how much homework to assign? Well, the amount of homework will depend on the class, so it's a little bit what you think is appropriate, and then you got to adjust up or down depending on how your students are able to keep up with it. But a lot of times they're not going to do the homework, so they have juku that they go to after school, and that takes up most of the time. So if you have a very intensive homework assignment, almost no one will get it done. Do or did you have bell work? Why or why not? I'm not familiar with bell work. I assume that it's sort of a line drill where students will talk and then you ring the bell and then they'll change, and then they ring the bell and then they'll change. It's just another class activity. How do you call on students to answer their questions? Why? Example, popsicle sticks. How do you call on students to answer questions? Usually I just point and try to say their name, and sometimes I will let them volunteer by raising their hands and then call on them, or occasionally I'm really mean and just do it randomly. But it's always the teacher chooses. Using the hanko, the stamp or the seal card, is a really good way to encourage student participation for asking questions or answering questions. That way they have a reason other than just the pursuit of knowledge to answer questions in class. Topic 2, teaching lifestyles. Teaching lifestyles, these questions, sorry, are not going to be really answerable. I'll go through and give you a couple of minor points for each one, I guess. What do you do for work or other when school is not in session? I do what I want. Yeah, go out. If you're going to be living in Japan, go learn how to do something in Japan. Take a culture class of some varieties, study flower arranging or martial art or something. But you're here, go take advantage of it. How long did you intend to teach versus how long have you been teaching? Well, my original gig was supposed to only be 1 year. It lasted for 3. I decided I really liked teaching in Japan, so I went back and got my master's degree and came back to this gig. How do you act when you see students outside of the classroom? Happy? Hi. Where do you get lesson plans? Usually I make my own lesson plans. There are some resources online, but there aren't really great resources online, so a lot of the lesson planning is going to be based on whatever textbook you're going to be using. So ask the teachers at the school what they've done before, and then use your imagination and come up with some really interesting activities to help round those out. How do you end your day? How do you end your day? Let's go with the assumption that this is in the day in the classroom. Usually I run out of time in the classroom. How do I end my day when I get home? Go to bed. Sometimes people take a bath before they go to bed. Do you think it's possible to live in Japan comfortably while teaching so long as you work hard? Yes. Topic 3, standards for entry-level teachers. How high of an education did you get before looking for a teaching job? My original degree is in zoology, animal behavior, and so I had a Bachelor of Science when I came for the first gig. I went back and picked up a master's in education for the second gig, and currently working on my doctorate. What kind of experience do you suggest I have before becoming a teacher? So if you get the chance, get out and volunteer in classrooms as much as possible. That will give you an idea of what it's like to be in the classroom. Some people go into this with an idea of what a teacher is and does and has to deal with every day, but doesn't have once the reality of it comes in, they have a hard time with it and decide they don't want to teach. So get in and volunteer in classrooms as much as possible. Help the teacher as much as you can. What majors and minors did you need to get your job? What majors and minors? That'll depend on what job you're shooting for. Almost anything will work for the JET program. Pretty much anything will work for the JET program. Pretty much anything will work for getting into high schools. But make sure that your English is good and you are able to correct writing. If you can study a little grammar before you come, that will be better, but you'll pick it up as you're here, because people will ask you crazy difficult grammar questions.